Right, I think we will get started. So, first and foremost, a huge welcome, for joining us today, and a big thank you for joining us on this Park Place Technologies webinar. Now, before we start with the delivery of the content, what I want to do is just take care of some quick housekeeping. So, firstly, for the benefit of everybody's experience, everybody will automatically be muted. As we move through the presentation today, if you have any questions or if you've already submitted some questions, then our intent is that we will either try to address those as we work through the delivery of the content, or if there's a natural pause either through the presentation or at the end of the presentation, we'll try to answer as many of those questions as we can within the allotted time. But I think I speak for all of the Park Place representatives here when I say a huge thank you for affording us some of your precious time to join this 1-hour webinar. Now, as we move through, the webinar today, is it's entitled IT as a Growth Accelerator, and how managed IT can free up resources for innovation. Like I said a moment ago, this is a 60-minute webinar, so we will do our utmost to ensure that we run to time. Now, from a presenter perspective today, we have presenters on both sides of the Atlantic. So starting from directly above me is Jordan. Jordan McPherson is our Director of Product Operations. To the left here, we have John Stock. John is the Vice President of North American Sales. And to the far left of the screen, myself, Darren Ellis. I'm the Regional Vice President of Sales for EMEA. As I'm sure you can see by these three wonderful photos, we take our headshots, our professional headshots, very, very seriously. So before we kind of go through the general content of the day, I think it was important just to maybe level set and start with a quote from CIO, specific to how MSPs are becoming more aligned and turned to as strategic outsource partners that have the ability and the capability to remotely manage and deliver IT services. Thanks to challenges and pains that most enterprises are facing with a lack of talent and skills, or the ability to retain the appropriate levels of skills and resource levels. Now, for context, this is actually really relevant to us. We're an organization that now has circa 21,500 customers globally, and that's a lot of diversity across our customer base, from a geographical perspective, but also from a diversity of vertical markets. Now, the benefit of that is that we have lots of conversations, lots of engagement with those customers, and there is a number of consistent challenges and themes that are faced by IT technology leaders, IT professionals, specific to their ability to retain, recruit, the right levels of skills and the right resource levels. So as we kind of move through this, I'd just like you all just to think and reflect on this statement here from CIO, and how this could be relevant to your business. And your attendance here today is clearly as a result of interest in the topics that we are discussing, and hopefully some of those topics and challenges we'll talk about will resonate with you, and you'll learn more how Park Place can possibly assist you. Now, this image here, right, is really a depiction of what we hear from our customer base. When you think about the objectives of a technology leader or a technology professional, your roles are full of challenges. Whether it be traditional infrastructure on-prem, whether it be in a colo, whether it be a hybrid cloud, or you've got public cloud services. There's a real balance and kind of tug of war between managing your run and operate, that traditional kind of layer of infrastructure versus the time, effort, and resources you can allocate to the more transformative projects that drive digital acceleration. Now, John will spend some more time talking about those challenges at a more macro level, in a few slides' time, and how this is impacting specific roles, within the technology team. Now, if you think about this contextually, it's a finite balance in terms of what resource you allocate to which side of of the image here. But interesting research from Gartner that was completed and published in December of 2023, so extremely relevant and extremely recent, depicts that based on their research that in the mid-size enterprise, in that space of business, that an average of 74% of the IT budget is allocated to the left-hand side of the screen, that managing traditional infrastructure, i.e. the run and operate service. That's 3/4 of the IT budget, which is spent on the BAU activities. And only 10% of the budget average is spent on those transformation services that are really driving digital acceleration. And this is again pretty consistent in terms of a theme of what we're hearing that's resonating with our customers. And we'll kind of talk through this in a little bit more detail as we work through this webinar. So we were kind of talking about that there's a lot to consider for technology leaders. There's various cyclical trends that come and go. Cloud is one of those, right? I think if you think about cloud and the impact that had on the market and the dynamic that was introduced to managing your workloads, whether they're on-prem, whether they're in a colo, or whether they're in some form of cloud, hybrid, public, private. It introduced a new dynamic, and the general approach in the market at a point in time was that it was cloud first. If you were looking to modernize your services, the approach was very much, let's try to move and migrate those services to the cloud first. That dynamic has now changed, right? I think it's now become more focused on cloud appropriate rather than cloud first, right? Not every workload is necessarily appropriate for the cloud unless you have some very, very tight controls and measures in terms of your usage of the cloud. It can also be very, very cost prohibitive. Interesting statement here from IDC, is that based on their research, that 80% of organizations will seek to repatriate at least some portions of their cloud workloads in the coming year. That's extremely, extremely interesting, and enters and creates some additional challenges from a dynamics perspective in terms of how you resource the ability to migrate those workloads from any form of cloud back on-prem. That can be resources in terms of your ability to manage that workload, but also from a physical infrastructure perspective, do you have the right infrastructure resources to be able to repatriate those workloads? Now, this is also a topic, in continuation, that we talk about trends within the market. Nobody can escape the topic of AI at the moment. It's everywhere, right? It's fundamentally in the vocabulary, I think, of every technology professional. And I'm confident that that most conversations that you would be having internally will involve some discussion as to where does AI fit within your business. Now, when you think about AI specifically, whether it be the Schroeder's comment that the data centers are going to evolve from communication exchanges into AI launch pads. Just the sheer impact that AI will have, right, in terms of the exponential growth in infrastructure. It's going to be significant if you're seeking or intending to adopt AI services to help you drive some form of of competitive advantage or efficiency, right? Particularly in the compute layer, right? The growth impact at a server or compute layer could be exponential, dependent upon the type and nature and scale of the investment that you intend to make. Now, similarly, as we kind of work through this, and to wrap this up before I hand to John, we were referencing earlier a few slides back that the task of IT or technology professionals and leaders is it becomes more complicated, and it becomes more complicated because of a variety of reasons. Right? Technology or service sprawl is one of those. All those things that we were referencing about on-prem, colo. You've got public or hybrid cloud services. You have Kubernetes and containers. There's lots of different dynamics here that make your roles very, very challenging. Now, from a technology perspective, it's also interesting that it's very rare for any organization to have a single alignment to a particular technology vendor, and it's often in our experience that that the technology stack is a multi-vendor stack. Now, most of what we're kind of depicting on the screen here are very broadly adopted, like kind of OEMs, whether it be Microsoft at the end user layer or in the data center, Cisco in the networking space. These are all OEMs that you would typically associate with stability and being in a settled state. You wouldn't necessarily associate those with areas or components of your infrastructure that cause you any significant pain, challenge, or headache. But even right now, if we just think about the bottom right hand corner of that with VMware, that's gone from a very, very much of a settled state into a fairly unsettled state post Broadcom acquisition and all the changes that are being made. And I'm sure there's many of you here on this webinar that have large investments in VMware that you may be in a unsettled state, maybe in a point where you are unsure or questioning your investments. What you'll learn through more of this webinar is specifically how we can help you across a fairly diverse multi-vendor stack. But what I'd like to do really now though is to hand this over to John, and John will spend some more time talking about the impact that's being felt across the IT department at different kind of roles. So John, maybe if I can hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So at Park Place, we have a very, very large customer base out there. We support 21,500 customers out there, and it ranges from SMB to large enterprise. We support over half of the Fortune 500. And I spend a lot of my time, and by the way, our customer range is all over the world, 109 different countries today. So Darren, myself, and Jordan, we spend a lot of our time talking to clients out there. And we hear, as part of our discussion, a lot of different common challenges that they're currently experiencing, as well as different pain points, and how we potentially maybe eliminate some of those obstacles that they're currently facing. And if I were to summarize it, and obviously those different challenges, they're gonna fluctuate depending on the level within the organization. And if I were to summarize it just at the infrastructure admin level, we are hearing that there's so many different tools out there from a monitoring perspective that it's going to be tough to be able to shuffle through that noise, determine what is actionable and what's not actionable, what's critical, what's non-critical. And this challenge is even more exemplified if it were to happen off hours, because a lot of organizations out there, they operate 24/7, but they don't have the adequate staff and resources to be able to manage the environment in a 24/7 type capacity. So let's say, for example, when it's 2 a.m. and something goes down, there might be some exposure there. Another challenge is with the other priorities that the business is driving, that because of the fact that organizations are being tasked to do more with less, it's difficult to be able to keep up with their patching schedule. At the infrastructure director level, there's a lot of issues in terms of finding difficult ways to be able to retain talent out there and fill different skill gap challenges out there as well with such a diverse technology stack that Darren mentioned earlier. So because of this, projects fall, back and they end up being behind, since they end up spending too much time on those, what I'll call the keeping lights on type activities, which those are obviously being those, taking those mundane tasks and not being able to focus on other strategic initiatives and driving the business forward. But again, they get stuck on doing these tasks, like, let's say, for example, patching or incident identification, or trying to remediate some of those lower level, obviously not business driving forward initiatives that they might have internally. At the CIO level, security went from a nice to have to an absolute necessity to run your business. And CIOs, they have to adapt a zero trust architecture from an organizational risk management perspective, as their new IT standards across their IT stack obviously get more normalized. And when you can't keep up with your security patching, for example, that's going to keep a CIO up at night. Another trend that we're seeing out there is that CIOs, they expect their budget, especially in 2024, it's going to increase, but it's only going to increase slightly. And it might not even keep up with inflation. So CIOs must recognize that the relative impact of higher inflation on their IT spending, and be able to adjust accordingly and adapt. As an increase, so let's say, for example, you get an increase in your budget of 6.5%. 6.5% does not keep up with inflation. So in essence, that budget's going to be either flat or potentially could get reduced because of that. So they have to find ways to use all of their IT resources, all of their staff at their disposal, while also trying to look at the big picture and, again, drive the business forward, which can be a challenge at certain times. And when you look at managed IT partners, they're looking to fill those different gaps or challenges that I just talked about. Filling those, what I called earlier, those keeping lights on type activities, like I mentioned before, or moving those mundane tasks from an IT team's plate so they could, again, focus on those strategic or business impacting or driving initiatives internally. Managed services partners, they want to be able to fill those different gaps or the voids and become very nimble and agile, not necessarily looking to take over the entire environment, but find different tasks that the customer's looking to move off their team's plate so they could focus on, again, those business critical initiatives. A few examples that we're seeing out there in the market space is being able to provide NOC as a service with managed monitoring, meaning that they can monitor their client's environment 24/7, 365, identify what is critical versus non-critical, follow the appropriate runbook that they establish at a time as part of the onboarding process, and escalate the appropriate responsible party. This way, again, they don't have to necessarily decipher what is critical and what's non-critical. Another great example of this is being able to fill those off-hour incident gaps I just mentioned. Nobody out there likes the night and weekend shift. So, being that resource to the customer 24/7, 365. Or another great example would be, I talked about patching and being that top of mind from a CIO perspective to maintain security compliance. Patching as a service is a common, what I called earlier, a mundane task they're looking to potentially outsource off their team's plate. Or if they have different skill gap challenges out there, or resource constraint issues, or resource alignment issues, like I talked about, being able to help improve the business and that 24/7 SLA-based organization to, again, ultimately focus on increasing the client's uptime. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Jordan, and he'll go into some of the Park Place deliverables here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. I promise to not kill us with PowerPoint slides, but that's maybe what we signed up for. So, when we think about Park Place, our focus has always been on being a trusted partner for our customers, their teams, for their IT infrastructure, right? And our offerings have really evolved to encompass the life cycle of those assets or that IT infrastructure, right? So whether it's a day one service for the device, right? We're talking procurement, deployment, that kind of project program type activity, we're there for you, right? If it's the kind of day two of service, right? The day-to-day management, maintenance of the equipment, we've got offerings. And then, lastly, that end of service, right? So where do we come in to, migrate off of those old systems or, decommission those, whether it's in a, ITAD method or something similar, right? So how do we make sure that that's the best cost and also sustainable for both the environment and your work, right? A lot of initiatives there. So obviously we didn't come here to talk about procurement or decommission today, but I just wanted to show kind of the scope of what we're trying to do here for our customers and where we fit. So drilling into the managed component, that's really where I think for a lot of organizations, managed services can really become this custom affair, right? Everything's custom, everything I want. And what's hard is it can make it really difficult to choose what you want, right? Kind of the blank sheet of paper, right? We'll do whatever you want. Well, I don't know what I want. I just know that I have problems, right? And so what we've tried to do is built out, service tiers that make it really easy to understand and follow kind of a maturity model, right? So, we start at the base offering. The focus here is going to be, taking our monitoring tools, getting those deployed, our fantastic 24/7 support center, having eyes on that, identifying the incidents, escalating to your team, to notify, right? Nothing worse than for want of an alert, you could have fixed this last night before bed, right? But now it's, 7 a.m. and you're in a hurry. Leveling up from there, we go to, the plus offering, which is really focused on that off hours scenario, right? Of something's gone wrong, who takes that call at 2 a.m., right? Who actually works that? And then again, from a proactive standpoint, how do we make sure things stay patched and are current, right? This is the kind of work that is constant, and we find a lot of customers really struggle or maybe don't even like doing it, right? So it's an easy, mess to take. And then lastly, in that kind of maturity model, we get into full, which is, kind of day-to-day management, right? So we're coming in, we're supporting those devices. We get you out of some of those run and operate tasks. I think Darren had that nice graphic of all the, the cable mess, right? But all that unplanned work goes somewhere else, right? But I think the other thing is our focus is still infrastructure, right? So we're not getting into applications. We're not getting into kind of end user, right? The whole scope of the world. I'm sure you've seen the supported product lists and things out there. For us, the key takeaway from when we're talking managed services is this is not a hardware focus, right? This is getting into the software or the infrastructure side of it. So it's, we might traditionally, us as a Dell EMC maintenance provider, right? But we can also, take over the day-to-day management of that Isilon array, right? Or that NetApp array, right? So it's that other view. So, and these are both available with or without maintenance, right? In the case where it's like storage or network servers, again, we're focused more on the infrastructure piece, right? So those OSs, the hypervisors, right? Things like that. So how do we do it, right? For us, it really starts with that leaning into our experience, right? So we've been doing, IT hardware services for 30 years. Our managed service teams, we've grown through acquisition, so it's not from start. We were able to take that in. From what do we support? We're really more technology focused than vendor. So the last slide showed a bunch of, gear that we do support, but our focus isn't really on an OEM or anything like that, right? We're looking at, we support storage technologies, we support, route switch, and so how do we build that out that way? So the supported technology list is a good one, but I would say it's always evolving, and really our focus is more around the types of things, right? So if you didn't see something on there that you're really worried about, it could be that it just didn't fit well on the slide. I think the other thing for us is there's a lot of trust when it comes to choosing a partner, right? You're letting them into your environment. They're becoming an extension of your team. There's access and privileges that are going to be required. So we've spent a lot of time and effort to make sure that we've done things in a way that bring comfort for our customers, right? So Everything's been built with a secure first architecture, right? So it's all segregated and separate from our regular corporate networks and things like that. To prove this out, we've spent the time to do, a SOC 2 Type 2 certification activities. Also have obtained an ISO 27001, right? So both of those are really focused on, are our programs, are our offerings, are they secure, right? Do they follow good practices that people can trust? And those are kind of the industry standards, if you will. And then I think the other big differentiator for us is, we've got global teams, even on this call, but we also have local delivery, right? So from our field resources and that model, we're able to kind of do both, which is pretty unique and helpful. Continuing on that theme of, why us or whatever, right? So, we talked about the Enterprise Operations Center 24/7. We have those set up as centers of excellence in different regions, right? So whether it's North America, EMEA, APAC, right? And those are focused with infrastructure technology expertise, and those teams really are the, who's going to deliver that service, right? So they're fantastic. I can't say enough good things about them. We also have built on our own software. So that's, two factors, right? So one is the Intuity software platform. So it was a network performance management platform that Park Place acquired a few years ago. And we have expanded and built that into our, baseline monitoring and management for infrastructure, right? And so that'll be, that's what enables us, right? So our development teams and our Enterprise Operations Center teams, they're connected, they're able to work together and build things that are useful and helpful to deliver services, right? We also have a service delivery portal called Central Park, which again is a self-built tool. And this really brings together all the different aspects of how you get service, right? So it's one screen to log into, manage your tickets, manage your monitoring, manage your, what's on contract, right? So just really easy to work with. From those tools, the next piece is, and we talked about a lot of these can get really customizable, and our services are configurable, right? So they're not one size fits nobody, but we have built our standards and our baselines around that experience. So by bringing in our SMEs, our history, everybody that's worked together, we've been able to really build out a starting point for monitoring for these templates that enables you to not have to make every decision, right? But they are still tunable for your environment. And then, lastly, this idea of governance, right? So, managed services, like anything else within your environment, it's going to evolve and change with your environment. Our focus is really around taking these tools, these people, these templates. We do what's called a hypercare process. So during the initial onboarding, it's just a very vigilant support level, right? We meet more frequently, we review a little more aggressively than we would, right? Do you like this? Do you not? And then that really feeds into this idea of an everboarding, right? So these are regular service meetings where we're going to go through how the tickets, maybe were, what service was good, what could be better, and help continually kind of ingrain this service into your team and make it valuable to you. So, I think, just digging into trying to tie it all together, which is always nice. Thanks for that, guys. Let me do that. John talked about some of the pain points and where those come in and how managed service providers might help. And so for us, from an alignment on our offerings, right, this is where we see it. So if you're, struggling with the, having enough people for the 7x24, or, it's alert fatigue, or, sometimes alert fatigue can be missing alerts too, right? Because there's so much noise, you don't realize that there's things missing. So that can be a really tough problem. And you're just struggling to stay focused on what matters, right? We think Base is a really great option for some of those problems. And that's going to give you that 24/7 monitoring. The EOC teams are going to triage all those alerts. They're going to focus on what's actionable. and then escalate that back to your teams, which is really, again, the idea of being able to fix something last night instead of this morning is always really appealing to me. If it is a compliance security problem, right, where kind of patching is inconsistent or tough to get on time or tough to be able to prove that it's been done, the other side of that is kind of the SLA attainment, which really feeds into end user satisfaction and what people think about the internal IT service, if you will. We think Plus is a great tool to help teams there, right? And again, this is about extending your team's capabilities to have more time to focus on those grow and transform type tasks, right? And then really, if we're just trying to figure out how do we get this under control from a spend standpoint, we just want to have uptime. We want to, keep our infrastructure on-prem, but manage it less. I think that's where full really comes in and shines, right? So that's going to be those run and operate type activities, and the day-to-day administration, if you will. So I think that we have a pretty good solution or service for wherever you're at, and we can obviously grow as we go. We see a lot of people start with base and kind of work their way up. So it definitely can change. I'm gonna launch another poll while I still have the conch shell here, and I'm gonna let and then I'll come back and share that kind of next slide for you guys.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah,
Sure thing.
appreciate you kind of walking through the offerings, and just helping everybody understand, what are the packages that we offer, what's the capability, related to those, across infrastructure, to your point, right? We're an infrastructure, focused organization. What we'd now like to do, right, is to try and kind of bring this full circle, right? So we've spoke about the the kind of market factors, and the trends. John walked through the the kind of specific pain points that the specific roles are facing. I thought we'd just quickly walk through some real world customer cases, anonymized. But John, maybe for the first two, could you just kind of walk us through the first two examples, and I'll take the final one. You're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I'll take you through a couple of them. We had a medical company that was based in the Midwest United States, and they had a full-time employee that was one of their storage admins, and he was going to be retiring. So that infrastructure director decided, as opposed to backfilling that same exact position, they ended up hiring an enterprise architect to ensure that their IT strategy is aligned with its business goals. And we took on a full day-to-day management of their Isilon, Dell EMC Isilon environment. Another good example would be a European chemical company. They ended up fully outsourcing their LAN management to Park Place. Now they still ran and operated their LAN environment, and wanted their team to more so focus on the design and build type functions. And again, we took on full responsibility of their LAN environment. And then Darren, if you want to kind of round us out here with the UK example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so another really relevant use case, right? So a UK government entity, that was is ultimately responsible for kind of judicial cases, in the storing of kind of judicial cases in the UK. Had a real challenge with losing some key resources and skills for AIX. AIX was on IBM was the underlying platform, that was delivering the service for the management of all kind of case law. They lost some critical resources, really struggled to backfill and replace those. So turned to Park Place initially for the maintenance of the underlying hardware, but then also the the management and administration of the AIX, right, from a hardware and OS perspective, right. So that's what Jordan was talking about when we got to that kind of full that full service. That's since transformed into some additional kind of scope expansion with the addition of Linux, as part of their kind of strategic positioning to migrate from AIX to Linux. So we are now delivering an end-to-end managed service for the full run, operate, management, and administration. So a lot of deep technical capability across the business, across all the technologies that that you've kind of seen today. And hopefully that just kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor for where we're helping some of our customers at the moment. And maybe some of these things resonate with you. From the polls, actually, what's quite interesting is when we look at the first poll that we took, that from the responses, the single largest problem that that you all appear to be facing is really getting stuck in that run and operate layer, and key projects not being able to be delivered on time. Right, it's really interesting and just kind of supportive of really what we're talking about today, right? Those the BAU kind of layer of managing everything, irrespective of where those services reside, on-prem, etc. You all, for the most part, seem to be in a very similar position, that you're facing a common set of challenges. So for us, that's that's something we can certainly help with. Now, as we kind of move through, the rest of this now, I think what we do is we open this up into Q&A. So hopefully, if I open the Q&A section of the webinar, we will have some questions, which we absolutely do. So thank you for those that have submitted questions. So the first one, I will direct this one to John. So John, the question is, do you have a service offering which just handles patch management?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, we can do patching as a standalone. Typically, from a delivery perspective, we do recommend that we have monitoring as part of it, just because of the fact that if there's a situation where we do test a patch and end up rolling in the client's environment, we need to be able to quickly identify if there's an issue and remediate on the customer's behalf. So again, that's why we do, at least at a minimum, require monitoring as part of the packaging here. But yeah, we see this all the time from customers.
Thank you, John. Next question is specific to locations, right? So I'm not sure if this is referencing to serviceable locations in the US, but it's asking for US locations. Maybe if we just kind of walk through the parameters of
you know what, I won the argument with marketing, and it feels like I should have not, right? We usually have that nice slide we put in these decks that has the global map with all our locations on it, and I said, certainly we're here to talk about managed services, not our real estate. But thanks for losing me the bet, Francisco. But from a US location standpoint, we've got our corporate headquarters in Northeast Ohio, Cleveland. We've got a large support center in Boston, and then additional smaller sites throughout. But I think what Darren was talking about was the key to kind of serviceable locations, right? So we have field engineering resources globally, right? So everywhere that we can service, we have people in place. So it's less about where our kind of central offices are, and starts to be more about having people close by, or both.
And there's a couple, I'll just add on that, George. There's a couple of things that's unique about our organization, is the fact that we do have the field service capabilities. We have the largest number of badge W-2 engineers out there within the market space, which is to service our third-party support engagement clients, as well as professional services. So we can deploy resources if you so choose to. But with the shared resources model from a managed services perspective, is the fact that we do have the level 1 all the way up to level 3 technicians that we employ from the manufacturer's level 3 engineering team. So for example, if you need to get experts on the phone that specialize in let's say, just say VMware, for example, or AIX, or any type of other base Unix platforms, for example, we do have the skill set that you can get access to, again, 24/7. And then we do have the monitoring capabilities like we talked about before. According to Gartner, we're the only managed services provider out there that does actually own the software behind it. We bought a company a number of years ago that specializes in the performance monitoring side of the business. So that's why we give you access to the dashboard. So you see what we see from managed services perspective.
Great context, guys. Yeah, thanks for covering that one. We've got a few more questions coming in pretty quickly, right? So I'll I'll offer this to you both for input. So question is, I'd love to understand how Parkplace can tailor service offerings to its unique clients. Too many MSPs have a one-size-fits-all approach. How is Parkplace different?
Yeah, I can start, and then Jordan, you can chime in. What's nice about our offering is that Jordan walked you through the 3 different levels, whether it be from a base, a plus, or a full engagement perspective. And depending on what aspects of your environment or even at the device level, you could customize and mix and match different support tiers on the same agreement.
And I do think it's that device level resolution, right? So I think a lot of MSPs are oftentimes focused on pick a tier and then we'll size the environment. So I think being able to build by device is a big deal for flexibility. Really, right? I think that's the key.
And then we work in tandem with our customers as part of the engagement process. Is we're going to help build the SOW to make sure we do meet the client's requirements, especially from a full engagement perspective. I mean, that's where a lot of the trusted partner value comes into play, because again, we're going to work with our client to be sure that we are fulfilling that potential gap that they might have.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, right? Yeah, just go back to what you were saying, John, right? It's about execution, right? And having the ability to to deliver the service, right? Yeah, we're renowned for delivering high quality services, in the TPM space, right? There's more and more of our customers are now entrusting us to deliver these services because of the high level of service they've received from our business in other areas, right? So it kind of makes perfect sense that that we see an elevation of the kind of engagement that we've had. John, this is probably another question for you. So this one is, what is the Parkplace channel strategy? Can I leverage through my existing VAR partnership, or is there more of a benefit to go direct?
Yeah, we let our customers determine what the best method of procurement would be. We do have a great channel partnership in place, and you can procure our services through over 600 different partners out there. So yeah, again, at the end of the day, the customer has that particular preference in terms of what their go-to-market would be.
Thank you, John. Jordan, there's probably one for you, quite specific, but let's see where we go, right? So do you have a service that monitors infrastructure located in the DMZ or restricted network?
These are always fun questions because there's a bunch of assumptions I could probably boldly make, and I would say that generally we're able to solve these, right? So obviously at some point we're going to need connectivity out from the air-gapped secure network, right? So whether it's a SCADA network or whatever, those are a little bit tougher. For DMZs, no problem. That's easy. Those generally will have access back, right? We're able to deploy an agent within that network scope, and we just need to be able to tie back to our cloud endpoints, right? To get messages out and let people work, right? But our tools also are flexible enough that we're able to instrument some of the stuff that's less commonly seen, like SCADA, but then also standard data center infrastructure, right? So we've got some customers that are monitoring HVAC and batteries and temperature, stuff like that, right? Stuff that's not, things that we can necessarily do maintenance or managed services on, right? But we can still bring that visibility from a monitoring standpoint and coordinate with your team. Great question,
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, great question. Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate the response on that one. Right, John, we'll just wrap up with one or two more questions, and then you kind of move forward from there, right? So this one, John, is for you. So we have over 200 satellite service spread throughout the US at multiple medical facilities. The hours at all of these locations vary, and some locations are 24/7, which require downtime windows they provide. would you be able to coordinate patching schedules with your team?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we as part of the onboarding process, we'll establish a run book that could be very specific to those different locations over there. And then we'll abide by whatever the frequency from a patching perspective that's best practice for that particular operation. And then obviously meet those different service window requirements that you might have at each particular location.
It's super common for these sorts of things to come up, right? Where you've got a 7x24, whether it sounds like this is a healthcare, but manufacturing, finance, right? Where you've got sort of very tight windows for when downtime can be scheduled and planned. I would say the what makes this easy for us to say yes to is the size of our team and then the global span, right? It's working day for somebody on our team, right? So, you know, it can be really difficult as an IT organization when you're all located in, you know, in your head office in the IT department, and you know, you got to draw straws to see who's gonna, you know, be up at 2 a.m. to patch servers, right? For us, we have enough team that can be working hours for them.
Yeah, great points. Thank you for answering those questions. Now we do have some more questions, but very conscious of time, and there are some very, very specific questions that I think, you know, my recommendation would be that we would take those offline, and what we'll do is we'll follow up with everybody that has submitted or raised a question here that we've not responded to or answered. What we'll do is we'll follow up directly with you. You know, I think I speak for, you know, on behalf of John and Jordan here when, you know, when I say a huge thank you for, you know, for everybody's attendance today. You know, we really appreciate the, you know, the time to, you know, give you our perspective on what's happening, what's creating the, the challenges and pains that we see across our customer base, and provide some kind of further context and education in terms of how we can help our customers and partners. You know, so I don't know, John, if there's any further kind of closing comments for you guys before we wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, I'd say if you're interested in learning more, you can contact your Parkplace dedicated account manager if you already have one. I'll also drop the URL in the chat, which is a link to our managed services website. But obviously, there's various different methods to get a hold of us if you have any additional questions to follow up. But like Darren mentioned, we'll take some of the more specific questions offline. But we thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the webinar today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.